Blog Talk Radio.
Many people regard you as a personification of Ubuntu. What do you understand Ubuntu to be?
In the old days when we were young, a traveler through a country would stop at a village and he didn't have to ask for food or for water. Once he stops, the people give him food, entertain him. That is one aspect of Ubuntu, but it will have various aspects. Ubuntu does not mean that people should not enrich themselves. The question, therefore, is, are you going to do so in order to enable the community around you to be able to improve? These are the important things in life. And if one can do that, you have done something very important which will be appreciated.
From WBRN Radio in Boston, this is the Open Source Report on the 14th of August 2016. We apologize for the lack of open source reports. We normally try to have these out at least on a bi-monthly basis. Preferably we would have one out each week as part of our programming lineup here, which includes the political broadcast, Boston Red, the economics, the macroeconomics forecast, broadcast, entitled Numbers Man. And we have an international program, BR on the World. Nonetheless, all these programs are consolidated and running on WBRN Radio and other outlets across the internet. We're working on consolidating the RSS feed so it reflects the different programs. At the present time, these programs have RSS feeds and they're on various outlets, including including iHeartRadio, Speaker, the Blog Talk outlet, various other outlets in between the mobile outlets such as Stitcher. I mean, many of these outlets have combined or they have been taken over by other larger outlets. So we are now there, and we hope to be in the car soon here on some of the outlets that cater there. Now, Snitcher you can get into the car. This is a broad concept we call Internet Radio, which fits neatly into the open source / library world. Make that distinction here. We have supported the Free Software Foundation since 1988 here at Cranston. Thus, we see library software as more and more becoming the optimum software development tool. Now, open source can be a little bit confusing because it is open but basically semi-open. We'll get to the story of Google, and Google is going to a new operating system. But first, let's get the kernel. We normally do this at the beginning of all of our broadcasts here on the Open Source Report. The stable kernel is 4.7. And our kernel, we're running still on Slackware, and we have to get it up here, is 4.4.16. That is our kernel with a GCC version of 5.3.0. we'd bring that one up. So we are working on, and that perhaps is updated. We updated our kernel last couple of weeks that we did this. Now to Google and their latest project, something new for Google. It's called Fuchsia, that's Fuchsia, and it runs on the Internet of Things, and we'll have it on the marquee, and I'll just read it here. Every single operating system developed by Google to date has one thing in common. This is incidentally taken from the Android Police, a vulnerable organization. We've used things from them before. Nonetheless, on the Linux kernel, the Chrome OS, the Android, and Chromecast, and you name it, has powered Google hardware for years. However, Linux kernel is not ideal for every situation, especially in case of embedded devices like car dashboards or GPS units. Full-blown desktop kernels like Linux impact performance and cause other issues. There is a massive ecosystem of operating systems designed to embed hardware, and Google is working on their own. Enters Fuchsia, Google's own description for its project on GitHub, and we'll put a link there, is simply pink plus purple equals Fuchsia, a new operating system. Not very revealing, is it, when you begin to dig deep into the Fuchsia documentation? Everything starts to make a little more sense. First, there is the Magenta kernel based on the Little Kernel project. And just like with Linux and Android, the Magenta kernel powers the large Fuchsia operating system. Magenta is being designed as a competitor to commercial embedded OSs such as Fritos and Xfred. Magenta is designed to scale much better, embedding Magenta to work with embedded device enabling, smartphones and desktop computers. For this to happen, Magenta improves upon its little kernel base by adding first-class user mode support, a necessity for user accounts, a capability-based secure mode, which would enable something like Android 6 permissions to work. Android 6 is called Marshmallow. However, Magenta is designed to scale better, enabling to work with devices like smartphones and desktops. Sorry about that, but just the kernel. What's the rest of the OS? It looks like Google is using Flutter for user interface, as well as Dart as the primary programming language. Icing on the cake is a Sketcher, rendering that support light diffusion and soft shadows and other visual effects with OpenGL. Are Vulkan under the hood. The shadows and subtle colors reflected are key components of material design, so it seems like Flutter and Sketcher can be designed for material design UI with a material design UI in mind. We know it has support for both 32 and 64-bit ARM processors, who have been sold as the ARM, the British people, as well as 64-bit PCs. If you have the technical power, you can even compile it yourself and run it on a real PC or a virtual machine. As from Travis Gusenbeck from Google, also confirmed it will soon be available for the Raspberry Pi, number 3, Raspberry 3. So why is Google quietly developing a brand new operating system and kernel with support for smartphones and PCs, possibly built with material design in mind? The most obvious guess and the most exciting is that Google hopes to one day replace the Chrome OS and Android with Flickr. But perhaps Google will treat Flickr like Samsung treat the Tizen OS, a lightweight OS used on hardware not suited for full-blown Android. Google's collection of embedded hardware, such as on Hub router and Google Home, is growing. Perhaps Flickr is being developed for devices like these. But there's always a possibility this is simply a Google experiment. Google has a lot of experiments that have, as they say, disappeared. Google currently seems comfortable to continue using the Android, so they will see. Let me just dive a little bit deeper here into Dart. Dart has been out there, is ambitious long-term project. There are core goals that drive our design, provide a solid foundation of libraries and tools, make a common programming task easier, and be the stable, pragmatic solution for real applications. That's what Dart plans to do. Dart is an application programming language that's easy to learn, easy to scale, and deployable anywhere. Just looking at Dart here, and we'll try to put a in the notes here, and we'll get also to Fitter. Is a new project to help develop high performance, high fidelity mobile apps for iOS and Android from a single code base. It's an early stage open source project. We hope trying Flutter out, and anyway, said how to set your machine up. You're new to it. Anyway, we'll put this up in the notes so you can have it, and compiling it yourself. I'm kind of interested in that, and we'll explore that to get started. Using Android Studio, here you can do that. For purpose of this documentation, we assume that Magenta is checked out here, and it goes on to explain to one how to build this. We'll also put this in the show notes. So we have a number of interesting things here, very, very quickly, as one would say. And the project's GitHub page is simply pink plus purple equal Flickr. It's a new operating system. And Magenta, the kernel core drivers is there, Mojo is there, the building tools are there, and we have a lot of things to put in. Now let's flip here back. We originally found this at linux.com, and was the story of this brand new operating system. This actually came as secretly creating a new OS. Here it was created from another takeoff on the Linux, the Android police. Let me just go back here. And back to linux.com is where we have found that. There's always something new here. We'll go here. In open source news, the White House releases code policy, Linux security threats, and poses wider and more risks. This is from the White House, and this is on August the 12th, actually. The White House released federal source code policy requiring agencies to release 20% of new code they commission as open source. Open source, from Wired. Use the internet. This Linux flaw could open up for attacks. A flaw in the transmission control protocol poses a threat to Internet users, whether they use Linux directly or not. And some other things here in this particular roundup. LinkedIn's open sourced under the Microsoft regime. This is from eWeek. Some of these, we'll look at some of these open source. Wow, so now what? This is from Wired, the magazine or the newspaper. Here we'll look at it. The government is now a little more open. This week, the White House released the first official federal open source policy detailing a pilot project that requires government agencies to release 20% of any code they commission as open source, meaning the code will be available for anyone to examine, modify, and reuse in their own projects. Government agencies will also share more code with each other, essentially adopting open source practices within the government. This is the latest in a long line of high-profile victories for the open source movement. As recently as a decade ago, the world of both government and business worried that using open source would open them up to bugs, security holes, etc. But despite these early fears, open source came to dominate the digital landscape today, particularly even major pieces of technology, your internet with a one-to-one on a day-to-day basis from the web to your phone uses code available freely. Some of the biggest companies in the world are not only using open source software but open sourcing their own code. Walmart released open source cloud management there. ExxonMobil released open source development tools to help oil and gas companies adopt standard data formats. Very useful in doing that. Financial giants like the London Stock Exchange, J.P. Morgan, and Wells Fargo among the companies backing Hyperledger, open source that can reinvent the stock market. In short, open source is now the core part of how software is created, not just for companies, but every kind of company. Because of this, government corporations are realizing that open source is often the best way to develop and let companies share the burden of common infrastructure and compatibility standards. And that is basically the reason for this open development process. Venture capitalists are betting big on open source. I bet they are. And this is one of the cases for the transition to liberty or free software. A Silicon Valley outfit called Cloudera raised over $1 billion on its own. Meanwhile, existing companies like Google, Facebook, and Microsoft spend enormous amounts developing open source in-house, but many important and widely used projects are still struggling to, according to a recent paper published by the Ford Foundation. Take OpenSL, an encrypted software library used by countless websites, including Android and iOS. Prior to 2004, only one person worked on the project full-time. This was a big reason. One noticed that Heartbleed, there was a massive security hole in that. But now the OpenSL team patched Heartbleed, and the incident helped raise funds to prevent future problems. The Linux Foundation started the Core Infrastructure Initiative to help support it. And the Open SSL Foundation, co-founded by Steve Marquez, not counting the well, anyway, we won't get into that part of the money, but plenty of projects have faced neglect, including DNS mass. I think it should be masquerade, but anyway, which is used in Android phones, Wi-Fi routers and cable modems, open BSD security focus was there. So, in other words, there are so many open source projects, some will definitely have problems. The path there, the open source contributors are kind of living contributions, a living resume. That was one of the reasons. The next wave, these problems have easy solutions. Money won't solve all open source problems, no doubt about that. For example, Marquis said in order for people to trust OpenSL, SSL, it's critical that no one company or organization controls the project. This means one company alone can't hire all the engineers, and this is what happened in the Red Hat project that many of, including Linus Torvalds was working there. Software developer Eschreit argues that the new movement is emerging from the open source community. She believes that the movement should bring more attention to community and actually paying people for their labor. We are here not because of the source code, we are here because of the community says. She says this will make the hierarchical pursuits purists, who have fought long and hard to bring the code, including the code funded by tax dollars, out into the open. And this ties into the governmental thing we talked about earlier here. And this is one of the things that you're starting to see, the movement to a more of a liberate type model for open source. We have long advocated that particular situation. Now, this is from eWeek. LinkedIn, open source under the Microsoft regime, announced its intention to acquire LinkedIn. That was in June, $26 billion. Why is open source important to LinkedIn? The rationale and how it became important is to the culture at LinkedIn, is that it has built a solution that leverages open source technology very early, the whole field of engineering and the way to think about it, and that is a bit of the mindset within a project and the way that the work comes together. What will the open source philosophy change at all when it becomes part of Microsoft? Before the close, I actually was not aware of one thing or another, but I will express my own opinion. I see it changing. I don't see it changing at all. Microsoft, the functionality are a clone of what Microsoft is selling. Then there is a discussion here, and kind of skipping a little bit here, but in other words, fundamentally, you should be free to open source anything. Having said that, in order to open source anything and be a good citizen, that was the whole idea there. Being a good citizen, there are a couple of things you need to do. One, the product is a good code. Well, naturally, that would be there. That is intuitive, and make it compile and have the tests and documentation. Well, those are the kinds of things that we see out there. Incidentally, this was published on the let's see how they're doing it here, the 6th of August, and this is Daryl K. Taft in the week there. And let's see what else is in the roundup here. We got through Wired article here. And we won't feature that one. We'll skip it. But nonetheless, the government particular situation is a very good indeed, a way to go. And we'll probably see more of this as we roll merrily along. Let me cover some other things here that have been left in the hamper, so to speak, for a very long time. Have been literally just sitting around. This is from a site that we follow here at Cranston, the best open source here, and this is open source medical records. Open source MRS is a flexible electronic medical record platform, can be customized to the needs of clinic and research organizations. It supports creation and maintenance of patient data, including demographics and clinical observations. It is based on the principle that information should be stored in a way that makes it easy to summarize and analyze. The other one here is a Patient OS, an open source healthcare information system, pronounced Patient OS. It stands for open source and has been designated from the outset to be a healthcare information system. And it is scheduling orders, meds, does everything. The pharmacy, clinical docs, billing, and a broad commercial support and distribution there. Is written in pure Java with tools that you can customize it. The Tor project, this is one that's been left over for a while, but nonetheless it has been updated against many flaws out there that the Tor browser to protect it from interfering busybodies, as they call it. That is the Onion router that has been around for a very, very long time. Project, and it has, of course, the router and the Tor browser as part of it. If I will go into the Tor project, well, anyway, we'll skip along here. And Bulgaria's decree, and this is something around from July the 9th, that all government software should be open source. Taxpayers pay for it, and they should get access to it. Well, the U.S. government now has a 20% access. Well, that is a start. Bulgaria was ahead of them. A much smaller country. The open source is a cost-saving exercise, and the government, the departments will switch to LibreOffice, much to the annoyance of Microsoft. And the UK government has absolutely no problem giving back to taxpayers. It's tried to save internal costs there. So in other words, you start to see more is the first country to make a law out of open source government. The UK has looked at the idea for some time there in the UK. So more governments are moving. It's a slow process, as you could figure it would be. Now this is left over also. New social media tools empower citizen journalists. One of the things we have been interested in, democratizing media, and more tools have been are out there to do just that. The use of smartphones and various other things have improved the citizens' ability to use media there. And I was looking for a specific tool here, and I assume we had one here. but oh well, we'll have to get back there. Now to the Linux kernel. This is the kernel 7.0. New support for virtual devices, drivers, and more is here. No doubt that came out in the last of July the 24th. And after release of 4.6. Well, many of the devices are sort of lagged behind on this, but they will, more and more will be coming. The biggest news at least includes drivers for the Polaris line of AMD GPUs. So more and more is out there. At the same time, NVIDIA is clugging along the project there to get the new drivers out. USB IP subsystem has started supporting virtual devices, including USB IP is already an interesting little project within itself. Support for virtual devices, that is USB IP, is even more useful for developers. So we're starting to see things go into the kernel. The ARM chips are they new support of their first generation Kindle Fire. What's that? The 33250 chip is used in Samsung Galaxy Gear line of smart switches and the Orange Pi single board computer, to name just three. So these are things that the new kernel is coming out with now. The kernel is bulky, there's no doubt about that. We used to have it on, I believe, 2 floppy disks. Now you have to put it on a DVD, and that is Slackware, and then of course it's expandable. After that, Bluetooth, Intel Bluetooth devices there. Broadcom's what is it? BCM Z71 chip is supported there. Load pin modules. Much of the module system is in there and being expanded as we move along here. Now this is Linux.com. We've already got the White House. Red Hat announces release of Red Hat Enterprise, the Linux Atomic Host 7.6. Red Hat has been moving right along here. That was at their conference. Scott McCarthy announced it, the general availability. This is the enterprise host here. For the past 2 years, Red Hat has been promoting the concept of super privileged containers. We hear more and more about containers. We've done shows featuring to handle tools and agents use case. McCarthy, we still believe there is an ideal approach for solving these use cases in a containerized environment, and there are plenty of solutions that would be nice to simplify and add their RPMs or even handful to atomic hosts. So the atomic hosts, we take the opportunity to inform them that Red Hat's atomic hosts offering for commercial Red Hat enterprise operating system is specifically crafted for the OS and has a small footprint and designed to run containerized workloads. So this is something new for the containerized people. The citizen journalist, let me just get to this on the Pokemon, their Boom hopes to bring geolocation to local reporting. The Pokemon craze out there, the app, but this is a little bit different here. This is a tool called Boom. Is a small startup that applies one Pokemon Go key tenant to local news, hoping to help readers find local news using geolocation, the real world geography location in Google Maps and other applications. Mapping has been a big thing going into journalism, and particularly as consumption habits shift to local media, with giants like Facebook and Twitter playing the middleman for much of what people read and watch. News has been decoupled from its geographic location, and to improve the alternative experience here, a news organization installed a plugin developed by Boom that allows editors, reporters, producers to manually tag each piece of content with specific location, and the reader can use the search function there. Boom launched its first publication, the hyper local Brooklyn-based PK Reader. Using a Boom interface, readers can view all the stories that the reader recently published about a specific neighborhood, a geographic area. There are between 400 and 500 stories indexed in the Boom particular situation there. Let's see what else is roaming here with Boom. Not that familiar with Boom, and I sort of wonder about the local aspect of an ever-changing, globalized world. Now, that is one of the questions that have to be answered, but we did see Boom there, and that particular work of using Boom, the BK Reader. Well, I guess this is the BK Reader here, and we have it up here looking at it live while we're doing this. And it does evidently focus on neighborhoods and events within neighborhoods. And I see what it's doing here. Brownsville, a health fair, etc. In other words, we'll roll on here. And finally, back to containers, to find open source code vulnerability in containers. This was as was clear at the recent DockerCon 2016. Containerization of applications has become a mainstream for most enterprises, but as containers use grows, it is imperative to have a clear understanding of the risks associated with the use of containers to full benefit for containers. Ensuring security of containers and deployments is essential. Container providers, and this is back to Docker, Red Hat, are aggressively moving towards reassuring the marketplace about container security. Red Hat launched a new container scanner interface, the BlackDoc Hub, and OpenSL a ScanCap scanner to easily plug in to Red Hat. Open source vulnerability management is a key aspect to ensuring container safety, no doubt about that. Popular container images on Docker Hub contain hundreds, if not thousands, of open source packages. Easy to compromise when you have that many there. One starting point is BlackDuck Security Checker. That's a free tool, and we've used it before. The BlackDuck Hub there is maximum size and scans up to 100 megabytes. Organizations looking to manage and deploy containers at scale need the following capabilities: deep insight, consistent management of open source risks, scanning accuracy, advanced vulnerability data, support for any container environment. A comprehensive open source security scan solution can be used with any Docker environment, support private, public organizations are there, and the Docker Cloud, including Red Hat, OpenShift is out there, Amazon, Google, and custom environments. So containers are being looked at, and they will continue. In fact, I think we're going to a container conference this week, so we'll see more and hear more about containers. Nonetheless, in the heat of summer, this will end our open source report. This is MA at Cranston Software, merely working along here, looking forward perhaps to winter coming. The long heat has been very long in this political season. On upcoming reports, we want to look more at what journalists use in terms of open source tools. We also want to highlight more security, looking at Open SSL and the improvements that have happened there. To summarize it, basically from what the White House has done, the Belgian government, Cuba, we didn't get that story in there, but Cuba is using open source and libre software on the island, has moved far. We'll get that in another report. But we see the movement moving, and the movement within a movement, I guess is how to explain it, that open source is becoming more free or more libre as they move along, and empowering open source developers to actually get in the development game and establish not only just recognition, but projects that actually will raise money to support their development activities, but not to attach them to one company. Say, for instance, a particular company, Intel, sponsors a project that is housed in the Intel organization. We want to move away from that. What we want is independent developers that work on their own, but work on the auspices of a central clearinghouse to support them in their project. And there could be multiple types of operations. We see on the hardware side, we didn't get into it in this report, more and more crowd funding type episodes or operations that fund small independent hardware boards and what have you. If you look at the EV blog that's out of Australia, there is always information there, especially on the mailbag program. We'll put a link to that, and you'll see how these boards, little projects, are funded. Have a good week, everyone. We'll talk to you soon.